Welcome to the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, the longest running weekly Philly sports podcast show in the world. Over 12 and a half years. It's going to be 13 in August, not August, April. My gosh, I only have a certain amount of brain capacity left, Len.
I can tell.
Seriously, there's only a certain amount of RAM, certain amount of gigabytes left in my brain. I can't even get the intro right after we've been doing this for close to 13 years. How you doing?
I can't wait to find out what name you're going to butcher this week now.
Oh my gosh, who the heck knows?
Because you're off to a good start.
Yeah, look, we're going to be getting into some Flyers talk. We're going to be talking hockey players. Of course, I'm going to mess up some names. You know, maybe we'll talk about Bernie Parent.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a bad one. I had to talk to you about that after the show.
You did. Actually, I talked to Eric about that on the show, and he was like, I can't believe Len didn't just completely just tear your face off. That you should have.
I should have, but I didn't want to be a dick. Man. I don't know.
You know what it is?
That's the one of the rare instances of me trying to be a good person.
Yes. I mean, it's one of the reasons like when I'm reading something, once again, for you folks out there, if I'm reading something on my screen, I'm like reading it. Like that's why I said Giannis for so many years.
So basically what you're saying is that scene in Anchorman where they're like, he will read whatever you put on the teleprompter. You're basically Ron Burgundy.
Basically, yes, okay. In a lot of ways. I'm the podcaster Ron Burgundy. Yes. Oh my God. Oh God, we got a great show. Really quick, before I talk about the agenda, folks, you got to wish this sweet boy a happy birthday. Because it was the man's 50th birthday this past week. We all got together, did a little celebrating, did a little eating, went to a brewery. It was fantastic. It was great celebrating. Yeah, you're the oldest one out of all of us, buddy. You're 50.
A half century of, let's be honest, not much.
Come on, lots of laughs.
But it's funny because I was surprised. I didn't realize all you guys were going to be there. I thought it was just going to be me and my wife and my father-in-law, and my parents.
Yeah, it was
and
a
my
surprise.
Sister. And as it turns out, it was a surprise party. And I remember on the drive over going, Jesus God, I can't believe my parents are getting dragged out here on the coldest day of the year. And it was one of those days where it was like 6 degrees with a negative 12 degree wind chill for like 2 days straight. It was in the middle of that. So the fact that, you guys came out in the midst of that, I do appreciate it.
Sure thing. My wife, we're getting into town and she's like, God, I hope we get a spot close to the place. Cause it's freezing.
It was just miserable. I mean,
I was out in Colorado last week with my family, and it was it was like in the mid to upper 30s. We're skiing, so of course, like it's a workout. We're like sweating our butts off out there. And meanwhile, we come back. We land in Newark, New Jersey. We're coming through New Jersey into Pennsylvania. There's just snow everywhere. We're like, my gosh, it wasn't even like this out in Colorado. It was crazy.
Yeah. It was just in our house, our pipes froze, and they're finally working. They're finally good again.
Okay,
but
good.
It was just like 2 straight days of just the kind of weather that just beats you down, and you just, don't even leave the house.
Right.
So the fact that you guys all left the house for me, I do appreciate.
Yes. Look, folks, if you're cold and you don't want to leave the house, watch the podcast on YouTube. You can listen to it, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, or wherever you listen to your podcast platforms, because we got a great show. We're going to be getting into some Phillies talk right off the bat. Is there still a window for this team here in 2026? That's what Len and I are going to dive into. And then from there, we're going to get into some Flyers talk, talking about the collapse before this Olympic break here. It's really showed us a lot, I think, about this team, who they are, who Rick Tocchet is as well. We're going to dive into that. The Sixers decided to trade Jared McCain. Honestly, I wasn't too happy about it, but we're going to give our thoughts on what that trade actually means in terms of the long term, what it means to the front office, what Daryl Morey's trying to do or not trying to do, however you want to look at that trade situation. And then we're going to reflect on the Super Bowl and really reflect on the NFL, what this season was and where the direction of the league is going in terms of the defense. Is the defense becoming dominant once again? As we know, NFL offense has been completely dominant in terms of air yards, passing yards. Is the defense taking over? We're going to dive into that. And then what we're throwing down on the table this week, our good friend Brandon Lee Gowton, yes, BLG from bleedinggreennation.com. He's going to jump on to talk about this Eagles offseason. We're certainly going to get into the offensive coordinator, the new guy who's coming to town, Sean Mannion, and his staff, and what we're going to be maybe expecting from this Eagles team in 2026. A lot of storylines, Len, to dive into, but let's first and foremost get into the Philadelphia Phillies here, buddy. Is there still a window of opportunity for the Phillies this season? You know, I've been really giving this a lot of thought as baseball season's right around the corner, buddy. And you look at this core, which is Harper, Turner, Wheeler. I mean, I guess you could say Nola as well, JT Realmuto, you know, getting re-signed as well. But these guys are getting older, of course. And I wonder heading into this season too, and there's no crystal ball here, can the lineup actually just be more consistent and not just like dangerous? You know, look, we know the Phillies can absolutely bludgeon teams, but then they can be ice cold for how long? That streakiness versus the disciplined at bats and how much they actually do rely on the long ball. I wonder if we are going to continue to see that, because I think when we take a look at what this Phillies team has been and the quote running it back, even though we are going to see some new aspects of this team, a few new faces here and there, you know, I think we need to really focus on what the plate approach is going to be this year. Is it going to be the same? Situational hitting, whether or not small ball is still going to matter in October if they're able to get there. So this is all me basically saying, I'm wondering if that window of opportunity is still there for this team, given the age of players, given how this team has played offensively over the past few years. I don't know. It's something I've been giving some thought to. What are you thinking here?
I mean, I think that's kind of born from the fact that there weren't any big acquisitions this offseason, and the whole notion of running it back, which, you know, isn't palatable to a lot of fans, myself included. You know, I kind of am just like, okay. I don't know if the window is the right thing to look at more than the ceiling. Have they reached the ceiling of what they can be? If there's going to be any growth in this team, and as far as the approach and clutch hitting in big situations, I mean, we know Harper can do that. We know Schwarber can do that. We know Turner is capable of doing that. Getting it all together at the right time has been tough, but I want to see, is there another level yet to Stott and Bohm, guys like that?
Right.
Because if there's not, then I think you're going to see them kind of, I mean, look, they're not going to fall off a cliff. I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs this year. Do they win the division? I'm not sure. I think they will. You know, I just and this is obviously beginning of the season stuff, and you know, it's not really going to factor in down the road. But the Braves are already starting with their litany of injuries. One of their big arms from last year, Spencer Schwellenbach, has an injury. Yeah. He is now on the 60-day injured list. That's a huge hit for them. They had a middle infielder that they brought in. He slipped on some ice and hurt himself. He's out for a couple weeks.
It's incredible.
The Braves, as mega talented as they are, and as scared as I always am of them, and I do respect them a great deal. But they have had like 2 straight years of just horrid injury luck, and it looks like maybe that's beginning to continue this year. If I was an Atlanta fan, I'd be like, dude, what the hell already? Then in New York, Lindor, I mean, New York has done some positive things in the offseason, but Lindor is going to start the season, I think, on the injured list. So, you know, I think it would behoove the Phillies to get out to a strong start this year and kind of do what they did last year and just build that lead early, build that division lead early, so that, you know, when those tough times come, you can coast. And then the playoffs are a different animal altogether. And they, for whatever reason, the clutch hitting that has eluded them in the past, it has to show up. But there are some ifs. There's some scary stuff. I think from what they were saying with Wheeler, he should be back sometime, you know, maybe after the beginning of the season. So maybe in May you see him come back. But does he have to work himself into shape at that point? Aaron Nola wasn't good last year. Can he come back? I don't love the fact that he's playing in the World Baseball Classic for Italy. I think coming off a bad year, maybe you ought to focus on the team that's paying you a ton of money.
Right.
But I like Sanchez and Luzardo at the top, and then you have to hope Taijuan Walker gives you more this season, and that Painter, can be what he can be. But I think they can cobble together some good starting pitching. Maybe not as good as last year when they were going deep into games all the time, but the bullpen's a little bit, better, I think. So yeah, it's can the lineup, do what they do in the regular season, and then put together smart at bats when it really counts, because that's been the bugaboo for this team for the past couple of years now.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm going to go back to what I was kind of initially talking about, but more towards the playoffs, is that and I've mentioned it before in the past here, Len, like I think there is a place for small ball during the course of the regular season. Like they just don't have to absolutely bludgeon the ball every single time. And I know that's what the team is designed for. I know it. I get it. But you have guys like Alec Boehm, like Bryson Stott, these guys that aren't the greatest power hitters in the world, where small ball can actually be beneficial.
And there is a place for that in the playoffs too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm saying during the regular season, how that plate approach
they don't
is,
necessarily focus on it.
Exactly. Like. And I think it could be a key component of keeping consistency this season. I get where you're coming from. Get out and get that lead in the beginning of the season, throughout the first half of the season. Get that lead. Try to get as many wins as possible here, but I just want to see more consistency with this team. The streaks where guys are going ice cold for weeks on end, it drives me absolutely crazy. I think small ball still matters.
Yeah, it does. And that's baseball. Look, some guys are going to do that.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to have that point in the season where they just hit that patch, but it's just when the Phillies all do it at once, and it feels like they all do it at once in October the past couple of years,
right?
Where it goes from annoying to like glaringly obvious.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. All right. Look, folks, we're going to take our first break here. When we get back, we're going to talk about the Flyers. We're going to dive into the Sixers, some NFL talk, some Eagles as well. We're going to be back in just a bit. Stick with us. All right, we are back, and let's now, Len, dive into some Philadelphia Flyers talk here, because this team has been the most enraging Philadelphia team to watch, my gosh, in some time. They completely surprised us out of the gate this season, and it was interesting. I was talking to our friend Ryan Quigley from BroadStreetHockey.com on the Table Talk interview show this week, and I used the old Denny Green line. I'm like, we are who they thought they were, is that what's been going on here with this team? And I think that they surprised us. Dan Vladar surprised us. Trevor Zegras surprised us at the beginning of the season, but injuries have taken such a toll. They really need this Olympic break right now. And I think at this point, because of the collapse, Len, this team is really kind of showing us who they are. Rick Tocchet has been showing us who he is. And specifically with the development of one particular player, one key player in Matvei Michkov, how this kid is only getting about 10 minutes per game. I know the last game before the break, he had over 14 minutes, but still, this isn't pretty at all right now. And I'm not sure what Danny Briere needs to do in the interim here, whether he needs to sit Michkov and Rick Tocchet down to say, listen, you guys need to work something out here. You need to get it together, because Michkov is the centerpiece of what this team is going to be moving forward. And right now, there's a lot of disarray going on with this team. There's a lot of bad luck. Again, Tyson Forster being out, he's out the rest of the season at this point here. It's sad. It's unfortunate. And I think this team is who we initially thought they were. Given the surprises we had. So I wanted to get your thoughts, because I'm at a point where I'm like, you know what? I don't even know if Danny Briere should do anything at the trade deadline, maybe offload some contracts here or there, maybe. But what does this collapse really mean to you as a fan? Because for me, it means this team still has a long way to go.
Yeah. In terms of what he should do at the trade deadline, I don't know that I mean, what does he have that people are, I mean, unless you're going to trade Travis Konechny, but what does he have that people are really interested in?
Or
I don't think there's a lot of,
Ristolainen, but
Ristolainen's always hurt anymore.
I
Like
know.
a year or two ago when he was like playing, well, and he still is playing well when he's in there, but he's hurt all the time now. Right. So it's just like, you're not going to get a lot for a guy that's, you got to be able to play. Right. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure they want to win, but I just like sometimes I wonder about like how serious this organization is. And as far as like what my thoughts are on it, my thoughts are the same thing my thoughts have been for the past couple of years. When every time we talk about the Flyers, I come on this show and I think, and I say, the rebuild isn't over. They don't have enough high-end pieces. They don't have a first-line center. They don't have a number one defenseman. They don't have this. They don't have that. They are not that talented. And that is the bottom line. Like,
that's essentially real quick what Ryan Quigley was saying this past week on the Table Talk show. He was like, they keep talking how they need that top center talent. Well, guess what? Go out and get it. You got to make a move at some point. Like you got to
give something to get something. I mean, like,
exactly.
what are you going to give up? And that's what they're going to have to decide. I mean, they have in Konechny and in Michkov. I mean, they have talented wings. You're going to have Porter Martone presumably next year. I'm guessing he'll be there, but he's another wing. You have nothing down the middle. You've got Sean Couturier's carcass. You've got Christian Dvorak, who you just signed for another 5 years. You signed a middling player to a 5-year deal.
Yeah.
And that's going to be another clog in the middle there. And I don't mean to say he sucks. I don't think he sucks, but he's not, when you're talking about a center that, is going to strike fear into the hearts of other teams around the league. He's not that. He's not going to do so. You don't have that. You don't have anybody even remotely in the neighborhood that's ever going to challenge for a Norris Trophy. Travis Sanheim's a good defender, but he's the best you've got. And, sorry, he's never going to be that guy. Right. And I like Sanheim too, but you're going to have to continue to, and I hate to say it because people are going to moan and groan because they don't want to watch losing hockey and they don't want the Flyers to lose all the time. And, things can happen. Somebody else can jump up and get one of those spots, but you're going to have to be drafting towards the top of the lottery for a little bit. And people can moan and groan all they want about that, but that's how you get talent, because this isn't when Snyder was around, there was no salary cap. People don't want to come. And I've said all this before. People don't want to. Philadelphia's not a destination. Right. It's not Florida. It's these guys. Yeah, they're cold. They play a cold weather sport. But guess what? When they're done playing, they want to go sit by the pool. You can't do that in Philadelphia in January. Right. They want to be down in places like Florida. And I can't believe Arizona wasn't a more successful franchise when it was there, because all those guys want to be in Arizona. Like nobody wants to be in miserable cold weather. As I was talking about at the top of the show. Yeah. So, what's luring people to Philadelphia? They can't outspend people anymore. Do they have a lot of people that you want to play with? No. So you have to develop those players that other players are going to want to play with. That's going to take time. This is not the people that wanted a quick turnaround and that wanted like, we want to be back in contention and we want to, be a playoff team again. It's fool's gold. I'm sorry to say that, but it is. You're going to have to take your lumps for all. You are going to have to acquire good young talent, and that I don't want to be Buffalo where you're missing the playoffs for however many straight years, 10, 15 straight years, whatever it's been. But you got to do
something.
You're going to have to take lumps because there's nobody that's scaring anybody on these other rosters. You mentioned getting Michkov and Tocchet together. I'm sure, I think that Danny Briere realizes that he needs to find a balance. He does need, those two guys to get on the same page. And I think, to his credit, I think Michkov knows that he probably needs to work hard during this Olympic break to get to a place, conditioning wise, whatever it is, where Tocchet's happy with him. But at the same time, I'm sure Briere is probably going to and talk it, and that's why you saw that uptick in minutes recently, and said, "Hey, Rick, people aren't coming to the game to see Noah Cates. They're
Right.
coming to the game to see Matt Vay Mitchkov.
Right.
No offense to Noah Cates, but I mean, look, this guy's supposed to be the face of your franchise. Play him.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
Exactly.
So I don't know. It doesn't.
There's frustration all around.
It
There's
just doesn't feel like a serious organization, and it doesn't feel like one that's going to get out of this anytime soon. I don't see where the quick fixes are that people think that is going to propel this team to be a Stanley Cup contender.
Absolutely.
It's not there. It's a foolish dream.
Absolutely. Let us know if you're watching on YouTube, your thoughts with the Flyers and even what we were talking about before with the Phillies too. Leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And, it's a frustrating time in the world of Flyers Nation here. And again, Len talking about, the quick fixes that certain elements of the fan base thought could happen. It's not going to happen, folks. And, we can also, as we start transitioning here to the Philadelphia 76ers, there are certain aspects of this team. You look at the long term, you look at the short term, you look at what this season is and has been. And I got to be honest, Len, I was a bit disappointed when Jared McCain was traded this past week. And we're going to give our thoughts on what this trade was, what it meant. So obviously, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that Jared McCain was traded this past week and multiple picks were given to the 76ers, including a first rounder this year. Gives them some flexibility either to draft or use those picks in trades down the line. They also moved Eric Gordon. I should probably mention that just in terms of clearing up some of that luxury tax space. And they've even converted Dominic Barlow to a standard contract. So I guess from a cap space perspective, it was, quote, good for the team, perhaps good long-term. I don't know. I wanted to get your thoughts. I think a talent like Jared McCain, who, yes, was struggling this year, but I don't think you just throw guys away after a short period of time of struggling, given the injuries he had last year that he was dealing with during the offseason. Yes, this team still has its core of Maxey, Embiid, Edgecombe. You can even throw Quentin Grimes maybe in there. I don't even know if you want to call him a core, but I think what Daryl Morey's trying to do is really optimize long-term flexibility while still being competitive in some way, shape, or form, rather than just doing like going all in right now when there is still some uncertainty with this team. Even though they've been fun to watch for the most part this season, I think at the end of the day, Len, I'm still disappointed with the Jared McCain trade. I don't know if you were disappointed with it, if you see what long-term is and understand what it means perhaps for them. I don't know. What were your thoughts when you heard about the trade and since been thinking about it?
I understand the cap space thing about it. If you want to get under a luxury tax or whatever, and those are your financial objectives. I mean, that to me is why they did the deal. I think it was a combination of two things. It was the luxury tax. They wanted to get underneath that. So they felt they had to make that move financially. And I do think on some level, the decision makers within the Sixers organization gave up on Jared McCain. And I think maybe they did that a little quick. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, they gave away an all-star in the future. But at the same time, I mean, a year and a half, really, and that's basically what it was. So it just seems like a bit of a quick hook to me. And it seems like maybe that was done a little bit too quickly. Listen, Oklahoma City is going to be on TV a lot. They're going to make a deep playoff run again, probably. So if the time comes when they're in some playoff games and McCain is hitting some big threes for them, you're going to hear a lot of moaning and groaning locally, because people are going to be like, oh, good, we traded that away. I mean, picks are cool. I'm always happy with that. I do think that they need to consider, turning over the roster a little bit in the future, maybe adding some front court depth. I like Barlow. I like, being able to convert him into a from a two-way contract into just an NBA contract. I like that aspect of it. So good for him. I'm happy for him that he was able to get that. So, that's nice. But at the same time, I do think that they need to kind of continue to build the backcourt, or the front court rather, prepare for the future, where, if Embiid, God forbid, does get hurt again. I'll tell you what, I was watching, because now that they have a first round pick again, I'm back in, going on to mock draft sites.
Yes.
So, and I was watching last night the Arizona Kansas game, where number one ranked undefeated Arizona went into Fog Allen Fieldhouse in Kansas and lost their first game of the year. Kansas has a big Flory Badunga, who's like 6'10", just like, active, like super. I was super impressed. I went on Tankathon. They have him currently projected to go 34th overall to the Bulls. So that's a guy that, like, if he gets a little bit of helium, is that a guy that maybe could be in range where the Sixers could take him? Again, I haven't seen a ton of college basketball this year, so I can't tell you who's good and who's not. But watching that game against the number one team in the nation, I was like, and I'm going down the dots. Ooh, Badunga's from the Congo. He's from the continent of Africa. He's going to Joel Embiid's alma mater. Maybe if they bring him in, maybe Embiid will see all these similarities. Been like, I'm going to mentor this kid and help him and all that stuff. Cause I know that my time here isn't going to last forever. So I'm going through all these, down all these passageways in my mind here about this, but, and who knows, they'll probably end up picking somebody else, but, but it's nice to have that again. The picks are flexibility and all that stuff. But again, I don't know what's the direction. I feel like the guard depth, which we had talked about earlier this year, the vaunted guard depth is kind of shrinking. Against the last game, Kyle Lowry played a lot, and Kyle Lowry has a gigantic fork sticking out of his back at this point in his career. He should not be playing NBA minutes. And he's had a great career, but the fact that okay, you trade away McCain and now you have to play a guy like Lowry. Not a good look. So, and you mentioned Quentin Grimes earlier. At this point, they kind of don't they have to re-sign him to a longer term deal?
I would think so.
Because you need some kind of backcourt depth behind Maxey and Edgecombe. So, I don't know. I don't. I don't want to completely say, oh, get rid of Daryl Morey, because he did draft Maxey and he did draft Edgecombe. So, he's made some good picks, but at the same time, I see some of his moves sometimes, and I just think to myself, this guy was considered a wizard at one point, a GM wizard during his time in Houston, and I don't see it. I'm not really impressed with Daryl Morey.
Yeah, I at this point, I agree with you. I'm not either, and that I am the eternal optimist on this podcast platform when it comes to you, Eric, and myself. And I think with this particular trade with McCain, it really was just analytics, cap strategy, and planning, though it may, and how I'm looking at it from a positive standpoint, may not make the roster stronger tomorrow, but potentially stronger down the road, especially with the accumulation of assets. You know what I mean?
I think that Jared McCain can be a very, very good bench piece for high level NBA teams. Yeah. I really do think that is, his kind of maybe role in this league is just, a really good, you can bank on him as your third guard coming off the bench for a good NBA team. And now he's going to get the chance of all chances going to Oklahoma City, a team that with nothing but great youth, like great talent, already have a championship pedigree. You can't ask for a much better situation to go to than he did.
Exactly. Folks, what are your thoughts on the Jared McCain trade? Leave us a comment on YouTube if you're there. You can also shoot us off an email if you want. PhiladelphiaSportsTable@gmail.com. Love to read your email here on the show and respond to it. That being said, Len, let's take a quick break, buddy. And when we get back, we'll get into some NFL talk, whether or not we're actually seeing more dominant defenses. And if the defense is kind of taking over the offense, Love to get your thoughts on that, buddy. And we'll hopefully get some listener thoughts as well, especially on YouTube. Let's take a break. We'll be back in just a bit. All right, we are back. And how's that whiskey? How's that bourbon doing there?
It's
doing
delightful.
Yes, very good.
I need to drink it because I already had one bottle previous to a couple nights ago that I hadn't opened yet.
Ooh.
Now I have 5 bottles of unopened bottles. I don't need, and I thank everybody for getting it for me.
Yes,
but I don't need to buy another bottle of bourbon for probably literally a calendar year.
Probably not. I couldn't believe. Our buddy Dave and Michelle and myself, we got you the same bourbon. Sorry about that.
No, that's listen, Woodford Reserve is a high quality bourbon. That's good stuff. So
good stuff. Yes.
You can't have too much of a good thing.
Only for Mr. 50 on his birthday. Yeah. Only for the birthday boy.
Well, with all the whiskey I have, I might not make it to 52. So who knows?
Yes. All right, folks. And Len, before I let you go, let's talk really about, where the NFL is going, because, after this Seahawks win, taking home the championship back to Seattle, I mean, their defense was just dominant, and they really looked like the Philadelphia Eagles defense from 2024. I mean, in the playoffs this past season, defenses were absolutely dominant. They ate constantly. And it just got me thinking about, the question of whether or not, is the NFL becoming more of a defensive league? I looked up some stats, wanted to throw those out to you and some of the listeners here who may be interested in this. If we look at points per game in the NFL in recent seasons, let's go back to 2020. It was 24.8 points per game, highest of the decade, okay? Then 2021 went down to 23 points per game. 2022 went down to 21.9 points per game. 2023, it was 21.8 points per game. Then we start to see a little bit of an uptick in 2024 and 2025. 2024 was 22.9 points per game. 2025, 23 points per game. So scoring dipped after that 2020 explosion and was lower in 2022, 2023 compared to recent historical highs, but it ticked back up over the past 2 years. This suggests, yes, that the offense within the NFL is still potent on average, with a minor downward wobble rather than any sort of dramatic shift towards the defense. But again, looking at what the playoffs have been the past couple seasons, whether it was the Seahawks, whether it was Denver, whether it was the Eagles last year, it's just it's amazing me that, even though offensive scoring is still high compared with historical decades, defenses have really shown, I think, flashes of resurgence, especially on some of the best units. But even though league-wide numbers don't show a massive shift, we are seeing the pendulum swinging back a bit towards defenses recently. Even though offenses are still very much alive and productive, we are seeing the pendulum really swinging back because defenses have regained some ground after years of after offensive dominance. And I don't know. I think it's an interesting topic to get into because I think with any sport, offenses and defenses learn from each other. And they change. They make alterations in terms of their game. We're seeing a lot more defensive zones right now. That's really taking shape. We've certainly seen that with the Eagles offense and Vic Fangio, and just how it's helping to change the game. So I just wanted to bring this topic up before I let you go, buddy, and just wanted to get your thoughts on it as well. Because I do think, even though it's still considered an offensive league, defenses are figuring out these high-powered offenses at this point in the NFL.
I mean, I think it's just part of the cyclical nature of the league. It's punches and counter punches, and it's a copycat league. So yeah, everybody's going to now try to do what the Seahawks did and have that dominant, fearsome pass rush. But it's not the first time this has happened. I mean, I can remember, the Ravens winning a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer as their quarterback because they had a absolutely terrifying defense with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and those guys.
Yeah.
I don't know who coined the phrase defense wins championships, but I feel like it's been around for as long as we have.
I think it was after the Bears in the 80s. I think that's where that came from.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I think, when it's strength on strength, when it's the best teams against each other, that's when things get tighter. I think that tends to happen in sports in general. And so you tend to see something like that. But yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of teams. Okay, what worked? Well, the Seahawks won. Let's copy what they did. I mean, I think that's just the nature of things. I mean, and you're still going to have standout moments. I mean, you had Saquon Barkley rush for 2,000 yards last season. This season, you had two wide receivers in Smith-Njigba and Puka Nacua that had 1,700 yards receiving apiece. So, I mean, there's still – it's not like the offense is going into this, crater in terms of, just we're not in the dead ball era of baseball.
Unless you're the Philadelphia Eagles this past year, they're the crater.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens there. I'll tell you what, on an Eagles related note.
Yeah.
With the way Drake May got knocked around.
Yeah.
If I'm the New England Patriots, Jeff Stoutland's free. Let's give him a call.
Oh boy.
I would absolutely. Are you kidding me? I would. Oh, okay. He's free. Let's give him a ring because
that'd be a heartbreaker.
Yeah. But if you're a team whose young franchise quarterback just got knocked all over the place and the best offensive line coach of the past 15 years just became available, you wouldn't give him a call. I mean, I know what I'd be doing if I was Robert Kraft.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there.
We will. All right, buddy. Do you have anything else here before I let you go? Any words of wisdom from our favorite 50-year-old now?
Well, there's no wisdom to be had there. Was there something on there about okay, never mind. I thought there was something about talking about just the Eagles offensively, like the moves they had made, but I think I might have read that somewhere else.
I think you may have read that somewhere else. I know I'm going to get into it with BLG in a little bit here. We're going to be diving
the only
Sean Mannion.
comment I have offensively on what they did was, and this is going to tie into how old I am now, but my first thought when I saw the name Sean Mannion was, Jesus Christ, I watched him play quarterback at Oregon State. Like I remember him as a college quarterback. Oh my God. He's their offensive coordinator now.
Yes.
So I can't tell you if he's good. I can't tell you if he's going to turn the offense around. That's my only frame of reference with him.
Okay. Let me tell you something really quick. So I'm watching, of course, because I love having the NFL Network on every now and again in my house. Even when I was on vacation, I had the NFL Network on every now and again in our condo, and they're going through the Hall of Fame, folks, the guys who are in the Hall of Fame, right? We're talking like Luke Kuechly.
I was surprised by that.
We're talking about guys who I had on my fantasy football teams, which felt like just a few years ago. And I was like, this was the first time where I said to myself, holy cow, you are old and have been watching this sport for way too long.
Yeah.
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
It sucks.
I mean, the Patriots kicker who was there forever, getting into the Hall of Fame. Why am I forgetting his name right now? For God's sake.
Vinatieri.
Yes, Adam Vinatieri. I'm like, God, I had him on several fantasy football teams years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It happens.
Len, we're still living. Barely.
For now.
Yes. All right, buddy. I'm going to let you go. Great seeing you, folks. We've got BLG. Yes, we've got Brandon Lee Gowton coming up. We're going to get into a ton of Eagles talk where this team and front office are going to be heading this offseason. Stick with us. And joining us this week to dive into this Philadelphia Eagles offseason, this team, a lot of changes for the former Super Bowl champions. We've got from bleedinggreennation.com, one of our favorites. He's been jumping on the podcast for years and years and years. And as we mentioned earlier, this coming April, it's going to be 13 years of doing this podcast show. We've got the one and only Brandon Lee Gowton, BLG. Buddy, thanks so much for jumping on here. It's always great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me. That is a long time. It's an accomplishment to be proud of, and I'm proud
Thanks.
to be a regular guest here. So thanks for having me once
You
again.
were one of the first, dude. You were one of the first back in the day. Appreciate you taking the time as always. And look, I'm going to say this, right? I have been very appreciative of this Philadelphia Eagles team over these years, where Howie Roseman has come back into the fold of understanding what this league is, understanding personnel. I think to a very large extent, understanding team construction. I'm grateful for this Philadelphia Eagles team. They were disappointing this year. The offense sucked. Not every year is going to be perfect, but I just want to put that out there in terms of some context with some folks. Like, I don't necessarily think the sky is falling when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles and their relevance to the future. I just wanted to throw that out right off the bat. I mean, do you feel the same way about that?
Yeah, I'm grateful, to have seen 2 Super Bowl wins, I would say.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean, we can't criticize things or be frustrated. Like, obviously, It was a frustrating 2025 season. And in the bigger picture, I have questions and reservations about where we are kind of in the short term coming off of this year. But the fact that they've literally demonstrated they're able to win another Super Bowl with a different head coach and a different quarterback, like, you can only kind of be so down on it, I feel like, when you feel like, okay, maybe even if we say the worst case scenario, this era doesn't work out, the pivot could always be there in the future to something greater. So I kind of always have that in the back of my mind.
That's it's a great segue into the reflection that I wanted to start our conversation really off with, BLG here, and that reflection being on Nick Sirianni this past season. Look, we know his record as the Eagles head coach. Playoffs every year, relevancy every year, but I have noticed, a lot of folks have noticed the criticisms that are coming to him, and specifically with you, BLG, you've been a vocal critic of how he has coached or how he's actually stepped up or not stepped up in various coaching situations as a leader of this team throughout this past year in particular. I have always been a supporter of Nick Sirianni. Again, I think it's that relevance that we were talking about, that he has helped keep this team. It's not just him. He's part of the cog. It's not just one person. There's a lot of folks that are helping to keep this Eagles team and organization relevant. But when it comes to the criticisms of Nick Sirianni, what was different in your opinion from what you saw this past season than other seasons in terms of his leadership and really being the head coach of this team in terms of what he needed to do?
Yeah, I try to keep it simple when it comes to my Sirianni criticism. And it's kind of just like, I struggle to see the value add at times. Like, what specifically is he contributing that I'm feeling good about and can be like, I can point to that thing and be like, okay, I feel good about that specific area. And use the word specific, because obviously you look at the bigger picture, it's like impossible to argue with the win-loss record. But that win-loss record doesn't necessarily tell me moving forward, which is the most instructive way to look at all this, what is Nick Sirianni providing to the table as we move forward that, like, I'm feeling confident about in the direction of the team and the solutions that he had. And to answer your question, I'll go there. Like, I don't think he had solutions last year. We saw that.
Yes.
Everyone's so mad at Kevin Patullo, and be mad as mad as you want to be at Kevin Patullo. I'm not here to defend Kevin Patullo, but that's clearly Nick Sirianni's guy. Like, that was his choice for offensive coordinator. So you can't criticize Kevin Patullo without also criticizing Nick Sirianni. And even if it's not necessarily like Nick Sirianni calling the plays, ultimately it's an offense that he is overseeing and is signing off on. And it's up to him from a CEO head coach perspective, if we're going to call it that, to like see a big picture problem with the team and then be able to have solutions and help provide answers to that problem. Like, that is all within his scope. You can't just separate him from those issues. So at the same time,
did he do that in previous seasons?
Well, like, at the same time,
yeah,
you could argue, okay, then he deserves credit when the solutions are there. And we saw that in 2024 when the team needed to pivot away from how they were kind of passing the ball a lot earlier in the season to then running the ball, obviously. And that worked well. But then, you have to adjust in the NFL because people are going to adjust to you. And that's what happened in 2025. And they couldn't just do what they did in 2024. And it seemed like there was no kind of pivot off of that. It was just the same kind of, let's just play conservative. And this is the biggest thing that really drives me nuts. It's just like the conservative style of play where it's just become avoid turnovers at literally all cost And I hate like how we've come to this point because I feel like I sound dumb being like turnovers actually aren't that bad. I mean, they are bad, obviously,
Yes.
in a
They're not
vacuum,
great. Yes.
but not to the point where you're okay with your offense leading the league in 3 and outs, because all you need
Right.
to do is not turn the ball over. Like that's
Right.
you've gone too far at that point. And
The
this is just,
stubbornness. I think you're talking about and honing in on the stubbornness that we
Yes.
saw. And that was what was most shocking, I think, to me. And I think Eagles Nation in general, the sheer stubbornness of not altering throughout the season. I think we may have seen a couple games this past season where there were some alterations made. I mean, even something as simple as Tyler Steen hitting Cam Jurgens or whoever's playing center right on their butt, to snap the ball, notifying the defenses that the snap is actually coming. There was like 1 or 2 games where that wasn't as prevalent, and something as small as that, I was so excited about, but then they got away from it. And just the stubborn nature is what really kills me about why Nick Sirianni just was unable to alter anything. Again, the stubbornness was really is what killed everybody, I think.
He preaches tough, detailed together, and I don't think the
Yeah.
Eagles qualified as any of those things in 2025.
Right.
And again, the conservative approach. Sam Darnold led the league in turnovers this year. That doesn't mean, again, turnovers are great.
Right.
And obviously, he didn't turn the ball over at all. Seahawks didn't at all in the playoffs. So yeah, there comes a time. Again, that's not that turnovers are great, but it's not that they're avoiding them at all costs is like the smartest strategy. That's not the case, I believe, especially when the context, you have a great roster. Your mindset shouldn't be, I'm so afraid they're going to turn the ball over. You
Right.
should like believe in your players and empower them. And even if we're going to accept that the offense like wasn't quite as talented and as good as we all maybe thought it was on paper, then you still have a great defense though. And a defense that we're literally, the owner is saying it's a Super Bowl quality defense. Jeffrey Lurie said that during the season. Well, like, okay, maybe you can live with risk a little bit more because you're going to trust your defense to bail you out of those tough positions if you do turn the ball over. And it's that same mindset. And sorry, I'm going long here, but this is it's a big conversation.
Yeah.
Is that, you look at all these end of half scenarios where the Eagles are just so content to like run the clock out instead of trying to get points.
Yes.
And that might seem like nitpicking, but like it's not. That was the difference potentially in the Cowboys game.
Absolutely.
Like
20 seconds is a lot at the end, right before the half. Get the ball, get 20 more yards so that Jake Elliott can potentially kick a field goal.
And I just don't think there's enough of that mindset of just like, we're going to go for it. We're going to be aggressive. And I find that hard to kind of feel good about at the end of the day. I want to go down swinging, go down knowing you tried. And I think they don't do that enough. And I think it's that my biggest problem, to sum it up, would be like a lack of ambition.
Lack of ambition. And again, from my standpoint, the stubbornness, and with reflecting on this past season, but we are going to see something new this year. We are going to absolutely see something new. That's what Eagles Nation wanted. There's going to be a whole new offensive scheme coming into the fold here in 2026. Jeff Stoutland is now out. Sean Mannion is coming in as offensive coordinator with a whole new staff, BLG. And look, Mannion, from what we know, is a quarterback-friendly type of coach, very analytical. There's the notion that he's going to end up building some more clarity with this new offense for the personnel on the field. And look, I know that it's early, but those of us in Eagles Nation, we love diving into the details. And we're certainly going to get into more details. But from an overall perspective, too, how should we be looking at Sean Mannion as this new offensive coordinator? And even balancing our thoughts, given the fact that he's never called plays before in NFL games, yet many in Eagles Nation are excited for the change here. How do we balance this out?
Yeah, it is a little bit of like a tough sell from the standpoint of Kevin Patullo is the problem. He didn't have any play calling experience. And now you're hiring a guy who has even less coaching experience than Kevin Patullo had. Now, I don't necessarily think that's disqualifying. Like eventually some of the best play callers in the NFL had to do it for our first time. So I'm excited for Sean Mannion from a standpoint of, I like the upside swing that the Eagles are taking, but that can't be, it's not just like, oh, he's definitely going to be great. Obviously there's just so much we don't know, and that could be for better or for worse. And it's just a massive projection. Again, 2 years of coaching. That's so little. Obviously
it is.
He was around a lot of, interesting offensive minds as a player, as a backup quarterback. Everyone who's had to speak about him has had nothing but glowing things to say about basically his football IQ. So that's great. And I'm guessing he crushed the interview with the Eagles. All that's great. And I'm willing, to see how this goes, give him grace. Like, I'm there in terms of being excited about the upside, but we all have to acknowledge like this could also just really not work at all. This could be we just don't know what we're really getting into here. So
Yeah.
I think you can look at the positives, and I think that's totally fair, but it's just, the downside exists as well.
It absolutely does. And in talking about the actual details of the offense that we may see Sean Mannion, just how he's going to lay it out for us. I'm thinking he's probably going to try to enhance Jalen Hurts' strengths. Again, he is a quarterback-friendly type of coach. Probably going to see, and I'm hoping we see more bootlegs, more rollouts, even more play action. We know that the talk has been Jalen Hurts is going to be under center, likely more, and I hope to God we're going to see more motion and more pre-snap shifts, at least to try to confuse defenses, because we didn't see much of that at all this past season with Kevin Patullo's offense, and even you want to say Nick Sirianni's offense as well. Hopefully, more overall creativity is what I'm hoping that we're going to see, BLG. How have you been thinking about what these new details of this offense are going to mean for not only the Eagles' offense in general, but even down to it affecting the personnel next season and how the personnel may end up performing? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think there are some encouraging signs from Mannion's background, from the fact that the Eagles are hiring some assistant coaches that clearly have ties to him and none to Nick Sirianni or Jalen Hurts. Again, that's something I liked about the Mannion hire. We don't like Brian Dable obviously has play calling experience, might be a good play caller. But I don't the idea that the Eagles were going to get someone who had experience with Sirianni and or Jalen Hurts, that was not a positive to me necessarily.
Right.
Because I think they need some new ideas. They don't need comfort level. They don't need more comfort level. So I think it's exciting to look at some of the signs, and you're like, okay, there could be some actually meaningful changes here. However, Nick Sirianni is still the head coach. Jalen Hurts still has a lot of say as the franchise quarterback. And certainly, is Sean Mannion, again, who has 2 years of coaching experience, telling Jalen Hurts everything, hey, you have to do all this, no questions asked. Is that
right?
I don't know necessarily that's how the dynamic will work or should work. So I still think, yes, we'll see some new things, but you also you're gonna have Jalen Hurts is gonna have opinions on things,
right?
And that doesn't mean I think Jalen Hurts is coachable. I think he is open to new ideas, but I also think you kind of have to sell him on those ideas and make it make sense for him and have him and get that buy-in from him.
Yeah.
So again, encouraged by the idea that they're incorporating new ideas and there could be some innovation, all of that here. But I kind of have to see it to believe it from a standpoint of Ian Sirianni and Hurts. And even Kevin Patullo, by the way, is still employed by the team. Now, that might change. And, maybe he doesn't have any say at all. Who knows? We don't know. But my point being, it's just, I don't think it's as clear cut as, you're wiping the slate clean.
Right. It is. You use the phrase, Sean Mannion absolutely probably crushed the interview, which is one of the reasons why they hired him. I wonder what that was. How did he crush it? I don't know. Have you gotten any sense from any of your sources, any folks inside the building of how Sean Mannion actually crushed the interview? I mean, was it essentially, the organization can't keep doing things the same way. We need to be thinking outside the box. Was that one of the ways he crushed it, do you think?
Yeah, I think part of it goes into, just based on what we know about the Eagles, they're pretty astute assessors of talent around the league. And I think they, have a kind of a read on this is Sean Mannion is a guy who's obviously not in the head coaching cycle now, but could be in the future. He is one of those guys who's a future kind of head coach candidate. And I think they're kind of just going down that path of being this is kind of maybe a year or two early, but we'll take the risk on this because we see, and that's how they felt about Nick Sirianni back when they hired him. So I think it's kind of more about that than I know anything about the interviews specifically.
Okay.
And part of it too is that they're kind of running out of options. Let's be real. It wasn't they had their pick.
Right.
So, that's part of it too. But ultimately, I just think it came to a point where they were excited about the upside. And they know, there's question marks here, but they're going to take that risk.
Again, folks, talking to Brandon Lee Gowton, BLG from bleedinggreennation.com. You can follow him on the Twitter/X at Brandon Gowton. BLG, I know you're on other social platforms as well. Why don't you tell folks where they can find you outside the realm of Twitter/X and bleedinggreennation.com?
Yeah, Blue Sky, Threads, Twitter, Bleeding Green Nation, anything. And by the way, everyone, if you're listening to this, go to Bleeding Green Nation if you haven't already. You can sign up for an account. It's free. And then you just automatically see fewer ads than you would if you're on the site anyway. So
There
really
you
no
go.
reason not to do that. I mean,
There
unless
you
you
go.
like more ads, then
Yes.
you can do that. But I would say you probably want to see fewer. So go do that.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we are going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to dive into the Eagles defense, possible changes with this team in terms of the defense and what it's going to look like this coming season. Stick with us. All right, we're back with our good buddy, Brandon Lee Gowton, BLG from bleedinggreennation.com. Always great content that they are putting up on a daily basis. Again, head on over to bleedinggreennation.com. Fantastic. And some of our favorite Eagles content. So let's shift over to the defense here, BLG, because I actually reflecting on this season, thinking that losing Milton Williams, losing Josh Sweat was potentially a bigger deal than a lot of us initially thought it was going to be coming into this season. Yes, Jalen Carter was hamstrung with some injuries throughout this year, having procedures on his shoulders. But the Eagles' defensive line, they just weren't the dominant force that they were in 2024. They just weren't the same. They lost a step for sure. So I'm wondering, how do you think Howie Roseman and Vic Fangio are really going to address the defensive line and the defensive front this offseason? And is it going to be a top priority?
I think there's a lot of, hope, which Howie Roseman will tell you hope is not a strategy. But when it comes to Jalen Carter, you kind of just have to hope he gets healthy. Yeah. He obviously played a massive workload in 2024. And I think that carried over into 2025. And as many as good things we can say about Vic Fangio, and there are a lot, I think one of the downsides is he really pushes those defensive linemen, and specifically Jalen Carter in this case, really hard. I think Jalen Carter played something like, the most defensive or the most snaps of like any defensive lineman or something, or right up there in 2024. So it's a massive workload. I think Jalen Carter has to take it on himself, to be in the best shape as he possibly can be, which Vic Fangio kind of highlighted that maybe necessarily wasn't the case last year. Now, also part of it being hand in hand with the injury and being limited in what he could do. But yeah, they really need Jalen Carter to be more of the player he was in 2024, again in 2026. So you kind of just, putting the faith in that he can make that leap again and kind of come back. You still have Jordan Davis here, could be up for an extension. He's going to be a big part of this defense. He was great in 2025. Need more of that again this year. Moro Jomo contract year for him. Could be a big opportunity for him to get paid if he doesn't already. So you're kind of really just counting, I think, more so on what you have. Obviously, when it comes to someone like Jalen Phillips, big question mark. He's going to be a free agent, and you either are going to sign him to a big deal, and if you don't, then you need to do something else, because all you have behind Jalen, or if you don't have Jalen Phillips, all you have right now are Nolan Smith, who I thought, he didn't really kind of build off of 2024 like everyone hoped. I think part of that was he wasn't fully healthy. We'll see if that makes a difference or not in 2026, and if he can stay healthy. And then Jalen Hunt, who obviously had a great year last year, but those are literally the only two guys that are under contract basically, but as your defensive ends right now. Everyone else like Uche and Brandon Graham and Ojolari and Okoronkwo, all free agents. Maybe some of them will be back. It's possible they're all gone. So they have a lot of big decisions to make there.
Absolutely do. Whether it's in free agency or whether it's in the draft, and even if it is in the draft, it's not like the Eagles have always been consistent in starting even first rounders. They have to an extent over the past few years, but first, second, third rounders, usually don't get too many starts on the defensive line. So it's going to be interesting to see how Vic Fangio and again Howie Roseman, how they're going to be addressing the defensive front. But you touched on something, BLG, which wanted to get into next. When we look at the Eagles free agents this offseason, not just from an offensive perspective, like we know Jahan Dotson probably not going to be around. There's other offensive and defensive free agents that, the list is pretty long, quite frankly. Some of these guys, though, I'm a bit concerned about having them heading elsewhere. Quite frankly, Reed Blankenship, Jalen Phillips, who you'd mentioned, even Nakobe Dean, some big names that if they end up leaving this team, you wonder, how are you going to replace that productivity? And how is this defense going to remain as relevant as it, quote, has been? Look, even Adoree Jackson is a free agent, and him leaving the cornerback room would be very thin. It would be very thin. I can't believe I'm actually saying that right now. Heck, even Marcus Epps, he did not play badly or poorly necessarily down the stretch. He's a free agent. So I'm thinking about all of these guys who may end up heading elsewhere, and it leaves this Eagles defense struggling perhaps in 2026. So do you think this Eagles defense could really be in trouble next season if some of these solid players might actually be hitting the market and going elsewhere?
I think it's fair to say, they could be worse just because in part they're so good these past 2 years. You still have a lot of good players you feel good about, if Jalen Carter gets healthy, let's say Jordan Davis, Ajomo. If you keep Jordan Phillips or Jalen Phillips, sure. If not, well, question mark. But Zach Bond, he's going to be here. I feel really good about that. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, so you still have quite a few talented players and very high-level talented players, I think, in that bunch. So can you fill some of these holes? You're not going to have an all-pro player at every position. I think, you're going to be able to maybe keep some of these guys or re-sign some affordable replacements. I think it's going to be interesting to see. Like Reed Blankenship seems like a guy to me that you'd be able to afford, but maybe not. Maybe his market is stronger than you anticipate. Obviously, the Cowboys hired former Eagles defensive backs coach Christian Parker. Maybe that's a fit for Reed down in Dallas, which would be pretty annoying, I think, for him to go to the Cowboys.
Yeah.
The Kobe Dean, possible too. The Kobe Dean, I think, so big from a leadership standpoint, such a unique player in terms of his value as a blitzer. I think the depth that the Eagles have at linebacker, I feel better than than let's say some of these other positions where there's just no kind of options behind him. Like you have Jahad Campbell, you have Jeremiah Trotter Jr., you have some options there that you feel good about. So yeah, it's going to be probably a mix. I mean, I don't think they're going to be making, they only, with how their roster is constructed, they have limited resources to work with. And they're going to have to find a way to kind of get the most out of what they have.
Yeah, it does. And I hate talking about it. I know you've been on other podcasts talking about it as well. The type of value, the type of assets they could get for an AJ Brown trade. I'm personally, I'm not a fan of it. I think he's a fantastic, one of the top receivers in this league. I would hate to see him go, but the fact of the matter is he's being paid a lot of money, and the Eagles do need resources. They need money to be able to pay players on the defensive side of the ball at this point. And I would absolutely hate to lose him, but it might actually be necessary from a financial standpoint.
Also, just from the standpoint of, I don't think he wants to be here. I mean, everything that my read is on, and everything we our own reporting at Bleeding Green Nation. AJ asked for a trade multiple times last season, and I don't think that should be a surprise based on what we heard him say, what his body language looked like, how emotionally uninvested he seemed to be. And I think that's a bummer. To be clear, I'm not rooting for AJ Brown to be gone. I don't think that makes the Eagles better at all. But if the reality is that he doesn't want to be here, I mean, like, maybe they can try to change that. We'll see. But I think he's kind of pretty set on his opinion. And I would like to be wrong about that, to be clear. For the record, I'm not celebrating AJ Brown leaving Philadelphia, but I think unfortunately that's kind of just where we're headed.
Sad, very sad for sure. But look, buddy, before I let you leave, I wanted to just dive into the NFC East really quick with you, because, I mean, there are shakeups with every single NFC East team thus far this offseason. So I'm wondering, which team do you think at this particular point in time, mid-February, is in the best position for 2026 within the division? And which team do you think tried to move the needle, but they didn't do too much for their position within the division? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's early, as you know. But I think, unfortunately, don't tell this to RJ Ochoa, I think the Cowboys are in a good spot from a standpoint of offense was so good last year. They should still have a lot of that. We'll see what happens with George Pickens, but could still have a lot of that in place for them. And if Dak Prescott can stay healthy, I mean, I don't trust him in a playoff setting, but as far as regular season goes, sure, it's possible. And that defense was so bad last year, as we know, that it doesn't even have to be awesome for them this year. They just have to be kind of like average-ish on
serviceable.
Defense. Yeah. And I like Christian Parker a lot. I think I think he's a very bright mind, and I think he could at least see a defense that gets to respectable, if not better than that. So, I think they're in a good spot. The Giants, like, they've made a lot of good changes, I think, but they have not earned the benefit of the doubt. Like, I can't trust it until I actually see it with them.
Right.
I think their quarterback plays incredibly recklessly and is going to struggle to stay healthy. Although he's talented, if he does stay healthy, I think, they have upside, but I can't, no one should be giving them the benefit of the doubt after all this time. And the Commanders are probably going to be better than they were last year. Simply, they were just so banged up. But they have limited draft capital, so it's not like they can make that roster like a whole lot better. I think again they'll be a little bit better than they were just because they were so bad last year. And Jaden Daniels took that sophomore slump. I think he still could have a bright future. Yeah, I think that's how I'm feeling about all the NFC East teams. Eagles, I think, kind of potentially might be riding this era out a little bit. Kind of feels like it might be. It's in a weird spot. It could be in a spot where in a year's time things could look a lot different. Could also be in a spot where like, oh, they found a way to rebound, just like they have basically after every bad season in these recent years, and they make the Super Bowl. So, kind of like a high upside, low downside kind of season, I think, coming up for the Eagles.
Going to be interesting for sure. And folks, you can catch all Eagles coverage over at bleedinggreennation.com. Love that site. Love our guest here, Brandon Lee Gowton, BLG. My friend, thank you so much for taking the time to jump on. Always love talking to you. Come back, join us down the road. Love to have you back on, my friend.
You know I will.